Hello and welcome to this practical guide on how we can use learning management systems, specifically Moodle, to implement competence-based training in Tvet. My name is Mawanda Edmond, LMS Administrator, Tvet Trainer, and Head of ICT Department at Uganda Technical College, Villa. This video is important for Tvet trainers, LMS administrators, and all the other Tvet stakeholders. This video comes at a time when UVTAB is soon introducing a new curriculum, which is fully competence-based. Okay. At the moment, there are a lot of changes in Tvet. At the same time, there is also an ongoing e-learning project in Tvet and is implemented by Cyber School Technology Solutions in partnership with Mastercard Foundation. Colleagues, you already know in competence-based training, the focus is not only on what learners know, but what they are able to do. The emphasis is on the development and assessment of the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude that one requires perform a task or a job in a workplace. So learning management systems, for this case Moodle, provides powerful competence management tools that enable a trainer to implement this approach. In this session, I will guide you step by step on how we can create a competence framework in Moodle, define competence areas and units of competencies. Those terms will be clear. Map knowledge, skills, and attitudes required in a given competence area. Create learning plan templates. Link those templates to courses and activities, as well as assign them to the learners. Okay, so by the end of this, colleagues, I hope you will be able to appreciate how learning management systems, specifically Moodle, can support, transparent, learner-centered, and skills-oriented training model, which aligns well with the Tvet curriculum. Whether you're a trainer, an LMS administrator, or even a Tvet leadership, this guide will provide practical knowledge and hands-on steps for implementing competence-based education using Moodle. So let us get started. Competence framework. A competence framework is simply a model or a system that outlines the skills, the knowledge, the attitude, the behavior that are required to perform a job effectively. Now, in Tvet, this framework has 4 components. The competence units, these are the activities that learners must perform. Okay. Then the performance criteria. This describes the conditions and standards under which the competence units should be performed. The competence levels. Tvet is very flexible. You can begin at the basic level and then you progress until you attain the highest level of competence, and then you'll be considered an expert. The other important requirement is the evidence. Now, learners must be able to provide evidence that they have attained a competence in a given area. So this can be through practical demonstration. We have real life projects, end of semester assessments, and others. So Straight away, let us go to Moodle Learning Management Systems, and we see how we can do this. Okay, now I am using a test environment. This is not our real college learning management system. It is important to always begin on a learning environment before you can go live. So you log in as a site admin, and under site administration general, you should see competencies. So under competencies, we go for competence framework. I already have some competence frameworks here, but we are going to create a new one. So I click add new competence framework. Now this is what we are going to use. So let's assume I have a course called data warehousing and optimization, and then this table here is a competence matrix. It is showing me the competence areas, units of competence, the knowledge, skills, and attitude that the learner must attain. Okay, so for starters, we are going to refer to competence area as maybe a chapter in a book, and then a unit of competence as maybe a topic or simply a unit. Okay, so I want to create a framework for this course. Remember, we said the framework has, the knowledge, the skills, the attitude, the behavior that a learner needs to perform a task. So a learner needs this knowledge, these skills, and attitude to perform the different tasks in data warehousing and optimization. So I will come and I give it a name, data warehousing and optimization. I can go on and I describe. So let me give it an ID number. Because we have so many frameworks, we must give it a unique ID number. I will say data processing 01. Okay. Then the scales. Now, a scale is how we shall assess or measure how learners have achieved a given competence. Okay, so we have different scales here at different levels. We have 2-level scales, we have 3-level, we can have 4. So you can define your own scales. We shall look at that later, but the most common one is the competence scale that shows whether one is, you're either competent or not competent. So I'll go and I configure that. Now, and I think in Tvet this is the best, where a learner is either competent or not yet competent. But you can, choose to either say is satisfactory, not satisfactory, outstanding, and others. You can define your own. So the default value here, the level that will automatically be assigned when a competence is first created. So since I'm assuming these are new learners, they are not yet competent. So by default, they are not yet competent. And then proficient, this is the value that will indicate whether a learner has successfully achieved a competence. Okay. And if they achieve the competence, they are competent, then the system will indicate that they are proficient. So I save. Visible, yes, make sure your framework is visible. The taxonomies, we can leave this for now. Remember, in our component, we said we have the competence levels. Okay, so we can, come and set the different levels, but we can leave that for now. We save the changes. So we have our competence framework called data warehousing and optimization. Let me edit and I add framework, data warehousing and optimization framework. Okay, I save. So in this, now this framework at this level, it is setting the overall structure where all the competence areas and the competence units will reside. So you can think of it as a container, for our framework. So I'll go on and I add the areas of competence. Okay, so I'll click this, and the areas of competence are already specified in my competence matrix here. So a competence area, we are looking at, it's the broad domain. For example, in this case, data sourcing is defining what learners, should know. That is the knowledge they should have, and what they should do. Okay, they should be able to locate and access data sources, query, databases, and how should they behave. Okay, they must be curious, they must be diligent. So I'll simply come and I pick my competence area. Okay, and then I name it and give it a code, data source 1. Okay, and then I save that. So that is my first area. Now, within data source, they are specifying the knowledge, the skills, and attitude required. Okay. So I'll simply pick, then I'll come and I add them in the description. Now, Moodle does not give us a direct way of, inputting the knowledge, skills, and attitude. But according to this competence matrix, we are seeing that under data sourcing, we need this knowledge, we need these skills, we need the attitude. So when I'm configuring it in the framework, I'll come to my competence area, go to edit. Okay. And then in the description, I will indicate that in data sourcing, you need to know database types. Then you should be able to locate and access databases. And while doing that, you must be curious and, diligent and professional. So I save. So under data sourcing, what are the units of competence? Okay. So here we have 2 units of competence. Now, the units of competence are breaking the competence area into something that is specific, something that is accessible. So the units of competencies are the building blocks that learners must complete. These are the tasks that learners must complete. identifying and accessing data sources, retrieving data from a database. So I will come and I pick these units of competence. So under data source, I will select data source. So this is the parent, then I add a child, that is the unit of competence. So the first one is identify and access data source. So since it is a child of data source, I will say data source, the parent was 1, so I will code it as 1.1. This will make it easier to track. Then I save this, okay? And then I add the second unit of competence, which is retrieving data from, database. So I will come and under data source, I will add parent, and then I add my competence there. So this is unit of competence 2. I'll say data source 1.2, and I save. Okay. So my competence area 1 is done. I create the second area of competence, which I think was data processing. So I'll select the main framework, and then I come to my second unit of competence or second chapter. Data pre-processing, I will identify it as data processing 1. Okay. Then I save. So in data pre-processing, what are the skills, attitude, and the knowledge required? You can see they are specified here. So I already have them in my template here. So I will simply pick and I edit and enter them here. Okay. Then I save. So under data pre-processing, what next? What are the units of competence under data pre-processing? Remember we said these units, now under data pre-processing, these units will specify those practical tasks that learners must demonstrate to show competence in data pre-processing. So the first one is assessing data. So those of us who are watching this video, you can now relate this to your area of specialization. So under data pre-processing, I will add a competence, a unit of competence, which is assessing data quality 1, because it is a child of data pre-processing. Okay, so I go on and I add all the other units of competence. Let me stop at this. Okay, so after this, what next now? We have our framework, we have the units, the competence areas, and then the units of competencies under each of those. We've also specified the knowledge, skills, and attitude that are required in each of those competence areas. So the next now, we need to set the competence completion rules. So these rules are going to determine how a competence is achieved. Okay, this will help us to ensure that learners finish all the assignment, so all the tasks under an area before we can mark it as complete. So I will come to a competence area, for example, data source. I come to edit, I set the competence rule. Okay. So the competence rule here is this competence will be marked as complete when, okay, when all the children are complete. So it will be marked when someone can identify and access data source, someone can retrieve data from a database. So if they achieve the set levels in the tasks that we shall set later on, then this competence will be considered complete. So I save that. I will come to my second area of competence. I also set the rules. So these rules are determining how this parent competence is achieved. Competence rule. So I've set my competence rules. What next? We need to create a learning plan. Now, a learning plan is going to organize our competencies into a structured, plan that we can assign to learners. Okay, this plan will indicate to the learner the competencies, the knowledge, the skills, and maybe the different tasks that they have to do if they are to achieve competence in a given area. So how are we going to do that? Under competence, we should see learning plan templates. Learning plan templates. I have one here, but I'm creating a new one. This is for a different course. So this template, I will name it as data. My course is data warehousing and optimization. Data warehousing and optimization. I can put a description and then I save. So that is my learning template. Okay. So this template now I must add their competencies. Okay. So this is going to link now the framework to the plan and will help the learners to see all the competencies that are required. So this is my template. Let me rename it to data warehousing and optimization template so that it does not confuse the learner. I save that. Then I add competencies to this template. Where our competencies, they are in a framework. Which framework? So I will choose my data warehousing and optimization framework. And which competencies do I need? I will add all the competence areas and their children or the units of competence. So I click that. Good. So you can see my template is clearly specifying that in data sourcing, the knowledge, the skills, the attitude you need, and these are, the different tasks that one must do. Okay. Data sourcing 1.1, 1.2, data processing. We have data processing 1.1, which is assessing data quality. Those are the only ones we created. Good. We are done with our learning template. Now we go and we create our course. Okay. LMS admins and trainers, by now, I know you already know how to create courses. So I have my course created here already, data preprocessing and optimization. This is for trial. Okay. So this course now is going to act as the delivery vehicle for the learning activities, which are tied to the competencies. Okay. So I have my course created. Now I must link this course to the framework. How do I do that? Under course, I have more. Then competencies. Okay, so under this, what are the competencies? I click add competencies to the course, and the competencies are in warehousing and optimization framework. So I will select all the competence areas, and the different units of competence. Then I add. Perfect. Okay. So that means now my competence framework is connected to the course, and I can easily track the progress. Next, in my course, I need to create activities. So it is these activities that are going to provide the evidence of learning, and we shall align each activity to a competence. So I have already created my activities here. I have an activity to test the knowledge, to test the skills, to test the attitude. You could maybe come up with one activity that is going to test all this. But for this video, I have made an activity for the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude. Okay. So we have our activities here. Next, we want to link these activities to the competencies. When someone is doing this, or when you, the trainer, you were coming up with this activity, what competence did you want to test? Okay. So by linking the activities to competencies, we'll ensure that when the learner completes this activity, there is competence that will be achieved. So how do we do that? I will come to activity settings. Activity settings, then under competence, what competence am I looking for? So the first one is tied to the first competence, which is identify and access data source. Okay, so my first activity, complete the assessment, and I can save that. Okay, then I will come back to my second activity. I also link it to a competence. Okay, so I will come to competence, skills assessment, and unit of competence 1, identifying and accessing data source. So it is still the same competence, and when it is complete, maybe send this for review, depending on the questions I said. So I save and I return to the course. Okay. Then the last one, which is skills assessment. So attitude assessment. I'm assessing that, and in that activity, which competence am I looking for? I'm looking for maybe retrieving data from a database. Upon completion, send it to me for review. I save. Okay, so you move on and do that for all the other tasks. Okay, so I go on and do that for all the other activities that I have. Okay, so once I'm done, I need now to assign this learning plan I've created to the learners. So the learning plan is acting like the roadmap. It is going to show the learner what competencies they need to achieve and what tasks they need to perform to show evidence of the competence. So how do we do that? We shall come to site admin. Under competencies, we look for the learning plan template. Okay, the learning plan template, data warehousing. So I edit and I create a learning plan. Okay, so when we attach this plan, it is going to help the learner. It is going to help us track the learner progress against the framework we set. And so the learner will know what to expect, what skills and knowledge they need to demonstrate. So let us see how it is done. So I already have some students enrolled in my course. I pick one. I'm picking Mia. So you can assign one template to several students or groups if you have groups. So I'm testing on one Mia, and then I create that learning plan. Okay. So you can see my plan is there. Good. And it is showing all the competence areas and the units of, the units of competencies. So the learner will know that he has to identify and access data. And so this is a pathway. So in which course that is in data warehousing and optimization. Okay. So after that, you can even customize the name of the template to a student. I could say maybe this is a data warehousing and optimization plan for Mia for student X. You can personalize that. Okay. So if we are done here now, I think on the trainer's side, this is all. Let us see how the student now is able to view the plan. So I have another account where I log in as a student. Okay. Let's see. Oops. I think this student is not enrolled in the course, so I will first come and confirm. data preprocessing and optimization, the participants here. Okay, I need to enroll the student, the course. Confirm, do I have, okay, yeah, this is the right course. So if I come to the student now, should be able to see that course on their dashboard. Good, data preprocessing and optimization. And if the student goes to their profile, not the student, the learner. In Tvet, we are talking about the learner. So you can see he's enrolled in 2 courses, and the plan, our plan we are working on now is data warehousing and optimization. Okay. So if the learner clicks that, they are able to see the plan, okay, and then all the competence areas. Okay. For example, we are saying in data sourcing as a unit of competence, and then the specific competencies, the units, sorry, the data sourcing, that is our competence area, and then the different units of competencies under that. Okay. Now, and the learner is able to track progress. So you can see at the moment the status is null because they have not done any activity yet. Okay, so let this learner attempt some activities. The assumption is they have, read all the course material, and now they are attempting the activities. So under knowledge quiz, okay, I'd already attempted it. So if we refresh this, we should be able to. If we refresh, you see the learner is able to track the progress now, and you can see the task under identifying and accessing data source was attempted, and then the learner was rated. So let us perform, let the learner attempt maybe another task, and we do come to my course. If I come to my course and then I go to more. Network a bit slow. Course more, then competencies. Am I able to see? Good, this is what I'm looking for. So for example, you can see under this unit of competence, the activities that the learner must accomplish. You see that? Okay. So for now, he has done one. Let us go to the student and see if they perform the attitude assessment. Hope I've not performed it already. Attitude, answer the question. So this is the question that I said. A colleague asks you to use confidential customer data for an unrelated project. What should you do? So we are trying to test the learner's attitude. So suppose that's the answer, then they submit. Okay. It is marked as done. And remember the completion rules we set. Okay, good. So if this is done, now if the learner comes to their profile and check the learning plan, they want to track the progress. Okay, so they have done the activity that is attached to this competence, but they are waiting for review. So as a trainer, if I come back to my dashboard, I should be okay. I should be able to show me the competencies that I need to review. So I need to review a learner's performance in retrieve data from this. So the moment I start review, the status here should change. Right now it is waiting for review, but the moment I start, it should be able to show that it is in review. Okay, so I come back, I review. Remember in the beginning we talked about evidence, so this is the evidence now. The learner must provide evidence that they have attained the competence through completing the task. So where's the evidence? The activity attitude. This is the one that was testing the retrieving of data from database competence. So I look at what the learner has done. I look at the responses. So this is what responded, and if I'm satisfied, come back and I finish reviewing, and then I rate. Remember the rating we used? You're either competent or not yet competent. So according to the answer provided, this learner is competent, and then I can put a note. The learner demonstrated the attitude, etc, etc. Then I rate that. Okay. So if the learner checks, wow, perfect. He has completed and has been rated as competent. So for now, he's proficient in two competencies. Remember there are 5. So you would go on and the learner would go on and perform. As a trainer, you're able to track how the learner is progressing. So you would come to the course. Okay. Then look for that learner, Mia. I want to see how she's progressing. And then I can look at the learning plan and see how far, has this learner progressed. So which plan am I looking for? We had a plan, we had targets to hit in data warehousing and optimization. So I'll look for that. And here it is. Out of 5 competencies, the learner is so far proficient in 2. Okay. And then, so you could go on and this one is not yet rated. I think it is awaiting review. Now for the completed one, I can see the course in which this competence was attained. So I click edit and I find course. Okay, so you can see this course is linked to this competence, and then you can go on and you can go on and do that for all the other activities. Okay. So finally, I think I hope you've appreciated how we can, leverage Moodle and the learning management system to be able to implement competence-based training. So as UVITA prepares to release its new competence-based curriculum, which we've anticipated for so long, especially in technical colleges, and the ongoing e-learning project by Cyber School in partnership with MasterCard Foundation, I think this is the right time for us, the LMS admins and the Tvet trainers, to embrace competence-based training using Moodle. Let us not simply focus on the design issues, and we should be able to create content, should be able to create the competence frameworks that will help the learners know exactly what they need to achieve if they are to be competent in a given area. So I end here and would like to encourage all of us, the trainers and LMS administrators, to take advantage of this Moodle competence tool so that together we can make Tvet a reality and empower our learners with the knowledge, skills, and the attitude they need to succeed in the world of work. Thank you so much. I remain Mawanda Edmond, UTC Lila LMS Administrator and Head of Department ICT. Thank you so much. Please feel free to like this video, share, and keep following, because we shall be sharing more videos that are very important